indictment charges against Paul and why he's being brought up on these charges. Verse 5, for we have found this man a pestilent fellow and a mover of sedition among all the Jews throughout the world, and a ringleader of the sect of the Nazarenes, who also have gone about to profane the temple, whom we took and would have judged according to our law. Is it saying that Paul is running around causing uproars? He's seditious. He's a pestilent fellow. And that this brother is just problematic. So we need to find something to charge him with, because he's running around causing all these problems. But the chief captain Lysias came upon us, and with great violence took him away out of our hands. Then Paul, after the governor had beckoned unto him to speak, answered, for as much as I know that thou have been of many years a judge unto this nation, I do more cheerfully answer for myself. So now finally, after all this ruckus, Paul's standing in front of the governor, and he's finally, for the first time, getting his chance to finally say something. He says, I'm going to answer for myself. So it doesn't matter what anybody else is talking about right now. All the accusations that's being brought forth, we're going to find out what Paul says out of his own mouth. We're going to find out if Paul was teaching you don't have to keep the commandments, or if they were lying on him. Let's find out from the horse's own mouth. Because that thou mayest understand that there are yet but 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem for to worship. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with any man, neither raising up the people, neither in the synagogues nor in the city. Neither can they prove the things which they accuse me. So Paul says 12 days ago I was just at Jerusalem worshiping. And they, meaning these Jews that's accusing me, they saw me there. And I wasn't disputing with anyone. I wasn't bothering anyone. All these claims that they're bringing forth, he says they cannot prove. Trying to say that I've been teaching that no one has to keep the laws and the customs of the Jews, he says these people cannot prove. But this I confess unto thee. But this is what I'm going to say to you. This is my confession. That after the way which they call heresy, so worship I the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. Paul says he believed all things, not some things, not a few things, not a knick-knack, patty-whack, give a dog a bone, not no small things here and there. He says he believes all things written in the law and the prophets. What does that mean? If somebody brought him Leviticus 20 verse 13, if they were sitting there on the judgment, a seat in the court, and said, Paul, here's Leviticus 20 verse 13. Do you believe this? Where it says a man shall not lie with mankind. If he does so, he shall be put to death. Do you believe this? Paul would have said, yes, I believe that, according to his own words. In the prophets, if somebody would have brought him Isaiah 14 verse 1 through 2, and said, where it says that all the enemies of Israel are going into captivity, Paul, do you believe this? He would have said yes. So how is it that we're getting Paul saying he believes the law and the prophets, and then in the epistles, people are trying to make it seem like he's teaching against the law and the prophets? This is why I say this is the dilemma we're getting ready to run into, and it's going to get better. It's going to get better. Because you can't have it both ways. That's what you're going to find out. You can't have it both ways. Either Paul is lying right here when he's on the stand, or Christianity's lying. Somebody's going to be lying, though. Somebody's going to be the liar. Let's get some more. Acts chapter 25 verse 1. Now when Festus was come into the province, after 3 days he ascended from Caesarea to Jerusalem. Who's Festus? He's the successor of Felix, the last Roman procurator. So now we have Festus coming down, and now he's about to deal with Paul. Verse 6. And when he had tarried among them more than 10 days, he went down unto Caesarea, and the next day, sitting on the judgment seat, commanded Paul to be brought. So now we have Paul getting ready to be brought in front of Festus. Let's see how this plays out. Let's see if Paul switches up his story this time, or if he sticks with the same story he just taught in front of Felix. And when he was come, the Jews which came down from Jerusalem stood round about, and laid many and grievous complaints against Paul, which they could not prove. What were the complaints that they laid against Paul? Paul's teaching that you don't have to keep the law. Paul's bringing Gentiles into the temple. Those are the complaints that they were laying against Paul. And it says that they could not prove it. Letting you know that somebody's lying here. This is the same accusation. You got to find out, this is the same accusation that the modern Christian church is bringing against Paul. You're both doing the same thing. But the difference is, these people were trying to get Paul put to death. The modern Christian church is trying to glorify him because you're lawless. It's the same exact thing. You both have the same exact accusation. While he answered for himself, I don't want to hear the answer from the Christian pastor. I don't want to hear the answer from the theologian. I don't want to hear the answer for myself. I don't want to hear anybody speak for Paul. I want to hear Paul speak for himself. That's what I want to hear right now. Let's find out what he says when he answered for himself. Neither against the law of the Jews, neither against the temple, nor against Caesar have I offended anything at all. Paul says, I did not offend anything at all against keeping the commandments, against bringing Gentiles into the temple, and against the king, which was or the Caesar, Nero at the time. This is out of his own mouth. What does this mean? If we would have brought him Romans chapter 10 verse 9 and says, well, what about this then? You just said, if you believe and you confess with your mouth, you will be saved. Paul would have says that's not saying that you don't have to keep the commandments. That's what Paul would have came and told you. That don't mean that. He says it right here. Neither against the law or anything have I offended at all. He says at all. Somebody's lying here, ladies and gentlemen. Somebody's lying. Somebody's lying. Either Paul is sitting up here right now being a bold-faced liar, and he's being a coward and not standing up for what he believes, or the Christian church is purposely lying on him. Somebody's lying though. Somebody's lying. And I'm going to tell you right now, the burden of proof is no longer on people teaching that you have to keep the commandments. Now the burden of proof is on all you out there who's trying to teach lawlessness. The burden of proof is on you, because you try to present one of those scriptures, one of these vague scriptures from Paul's epistles that can be interpreted so many different ways. When you try to present that, I'm not going anywhere else. We're going to stay right here. I'm going to bring this up where Paul says against the law or against the temple or against the king. He says he's never offended at all. I'm going to bring this up first, and I'm going to ask you, do you believe Paul? That's my question. Do you believe Paul? Do you believe Paul when he says this? That's what I want to know first. Do you believe Paul when he says this, or are you only believing Paul when it fits your agenda? When it's something that you can take and make it say whatever you want it to say and justify being wicked? When do you believe Paul all the way, or do you believe Paul only when it fits you? That's what we want to know. Which one is it? I'm not going, and I'm not budging either. I'm going to tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen, you need to do the same thing. When somebody try to present these scriptures talking about any one of these Romans, whatever, or Galatians, whatever, no, we're going to go right here and ask, do you believe Paul when he says he never offended against the law at all? He never spoke against the law at all. On trial. Because the two options are, if you believe Paul, if you believe him right now when he's saying he never spoke against the law, that means in his epistles, what you need to do is you need to interpret those epistles to correspond to what he's saying here in order to not make him a contradiction. Because now he's contradicting himself and he's being the devil, if that's the case. Now you're being the devil. You're lying over here. You're being a coward lying over here on the judgment seat saying, oh, I'm not teaching that, I'm not teaching that. And then when you get off, you're teaching people, yeah, I'm teaching you don't have to keep the commandments. That's the devil. That's being a liar. That's a deceiver. And if that's how you feel, and if that's what you believe Paul's doing, you don't need to be dealing with none of his letters. You don't need to be dealing with anything that he's dealing with. And if you say you do believe Paul, that means you need to make his letters correspond to what he's saying. You only got two choices. That's it. You only got two choices. And some people out there are just so wicked that they'll say they don't believe what he's saying here and still use his letters for doctrine. When it's dealing with your soul salvation, you don't need to be dealing with discrepancies like that. Well, when he's lying here and telling people, he's lying to the people here, but then he's telling people something else over here. You don't need to be dealing with people like that if that's how you feel the situation is. So you got a choice to make. You have a choice to make. Nobody wants to deal with this on Paul on the trial. Nobody wants to deal with this. Everyone want to skip over this where Paul is blatantly he's flat out telling you, I'm not speaking against the law. Somebody's lying, ladies and gentlemen. Let's continue. Verse 9. But Festus, willing to do the Jews a pleasure, answered Paul and said, wilt thou go up to Jerusalem and there be judged of these things before me? See, Festus was in league with the Jews. They were all trying to get him set up to come down to Jerusalem to be judged there because they know they were going to catch him there. They were going to, they know that they were going to pull some type of trial out and find him guilty. Even if the brother wasn't guilty, they were still going to make a way to find him guilty. So they were all in league with each other at this point. Then said Paul, I stand at Caesar's judgment seat. Paul says, I'm not a fool. I'm standing right here. Because it's obvious what you brothers are trying to do. It's obvious what y'all trying to do. Y'all can't prove anything that you're saying, and you're still trying to get me to go down to Jerusalem to get judged. You have to be out of your mind. I'm standing right here. That's what Paul says. You can go pull that stuff on someone else, but it's not working here. I've been around the game way too long, where I ought to be judged. To the Jews have I done no wrong, as thou very well knowest. Paul says you know it. You know it. And the Christian church too. You know he didn't offend anything against the Jews. You know it. And if you don't know it and if you don't believe it, you need to leave Paul alone. You can't be using Paul and making it contradict itself when you're dealing with people's salvation. That's inconsiderate and disingenuous. You can't have it both ways. You can't have the ice cream and the cake. You got to pick one. Either he's lying or he's not lying. Somebody's lying though. Somebody's not telling the truth. Somebody's only telling half the story. For if I be an offender or have committed anything worthy of death. If I'm an offender, if I'm teaching in Romans 10 verse 9 or Romans 3 verse 20 that you don't have to keep none of the laws, if I'm teaching in any of my epistles that you don't have to teach no laws and you don't have to keep no commandments, if that's my intent when I wrote these letters, I refuse not to die. Put me to death right now. If that's what I'm doing, I need to be put to death. That's what he's saying. I need to be put to death. If I'm offending and I'm doing that against the law, put me to death right now. If I'm bringing Gentiles into the temple, put me to death right now. He says, I refuse not to die. I refuse not to die. That's a strong statement right there. He didn't say, you can go ahead and kill me. He says, I refuse not to die. Meaning, go ahead and take me, man. If that's what I'm doing, go ahead and take me because I need to be put to death. Because Paul says he believed everything in the law and the prophets. And it tells you in the law, if somebody comes around telling you, let's go worship other gods, which is what the modern Christian church is doing, telling you to come away from the Most High and go and worship the Babylonian God, the God